The
Right.
biggest reason for returns is it didn't fit me when not solving for that.
Right. Right.
The very close second biggest one is it didn't look good on me. That we can solve for. Now, if you're able to reduce return rates by, say, one fifth, you're still talking about potentially getting a lot of these loss making companies into EBITDA profitability. Basically, bouncing between tens of thousands of models over here, and you can pause it at any frame where you see the model that you want to start with, and then you can customize those models. We are a little handicapped in not being able to have those GPUs at a very cost effective access. I think the way that the government can help is in setting up these massive data centers with like A100s.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Podcast with Professors. In this episode, for the very first time, we have a founder of an AI-based startup. We have Mr. Arvind Venugopal Nair, who is the CEO and founder of Neuropixel.ai. This is an AI-based startup that is trying to revolutionize the online retail space. They're trying to solve the problem of cataloging in the online retail space. We talked to him about his startup. We talked to him about the challenges and the opportunities in the space. We try to understand from him about AI, the future of AI, how can we adapt to the changing landscape of AI, and a lot more. I'm sure you'll enjoy this video. Watch the video till the end. This is one of the most special episodes for our podcast, and hopefully from here on we will be having even more number of AI-based startup founders. So enjoy watching.
So, Arvind, thank you so much for coming in, for accepting our invite. So, I'll just give you a brief about this podcast, what it is about. So, it started with both George and I speaking on different topics, random topics. Okay. At some point, we started realizing that this is also a chance for us to bring in different experts from different fields who can share with us their insights. We can learn from them, and we can take some of this in our own classroom. So both of us are faculty at a business school, so we can take those in our classroom. So that's how it started. And then we thought that if we are recording it, it will be there for public view. For others also, it can be seen, and hopefully at some point it will gain some traction, and we can build something out of it. So that's the entire idea of it. So in this, you are in fact the first guest who is from the AI space, right? Who's having an AI based startup. So to start things off, I'd like you to tell us what Neuropixel.ai is about. What do you do? How are you transforming the online retail space? If you can give us some ideas on that.
Absolutely. First of all, Victor Sunil, absolute privilege to be here. I don't consider myself an expert. I'm still learning every day. But thank you so much for saying that and allowing me on the show. So just to first introduce Neuropixel at a broad level, what we are is a 2.5-year-old generative AI startup focused purely on the fashion e-commerce space based out of Bangalore, India. Right. So what we specialize in is synthetic human generation. Right. So we can generate different humans that are photorealistic of different ethnicities, of different sizes, etc. And we also have some deep IP with patents filed in terms of apparel warping. So you can shoot apparel on a mannequin, and you can put it onto a model, or you can shoot it on one model and we can swap out that model. So we have some cool technologies over there, which I'd love to show you. Just at a broad level before we kick things off, right? I think the cool way to say this is that we saw the generative AI wave long before it came, 2.5 years old. The truth is that when we started with the generative AI wave 2.5 years ago, and we said photorealistic synthetic humans, nobody really got what we were talking about. So we struggled a lot, right? In terms of our first seed round raise, despite having a reasonable amount of experience, good academic credentials, etc. Both me and my co-founder especially, we still struggled. We got about 30, 40 no's before we got our first yes. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to throw out there, saying even though, generative AI 2.5 years old, it doesn't mean that things are easy at all. It's quite the opposite, actually. But yeah, back to you, Victor, and let me know when I can show you the outputs and show you what we're doing.
Why don't you show it right now, if you could? Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sure.
I'm just going to share a tab.
Yeah.
What you see over here on your screen, right?
Yeah.
This is just a quick snapshot of what we do. These are synthetic humans, right? If you saw them on an e-commerce platform, you wouldn't really look twice to think that they were
Yes.
fake. I'll show you a few of our solutions. The first one is how we generate editorial images like what you see on the right. These are
Right.
typically very expensive because it involves getting a model, a photographer, a stylist to an on-location shoot. With our tech, you can shoot everything in studio. We will change out the model, change out the background, and match the lighting all in one flow, right? So it becomes at least 60, 70% cheaper, and you can do your shoots much faster in your sort of studios, etc. With bands have. So the model that you see again, just calling out, this is not a real person, right?
Mm.
So we can do different article types, and we match the background to suit the environment. Like here, you have a lady in a blue sari, so we've sort of gone for a Chettinad house sort of environment. Right. Here we're talking about woolen, so we've gone for something like Dehradun type of environment, right? So in this manner, you don't need very expensive models. You don't need on-location shoots. The second
Mm.
thing I'm going to show you is virtual try-ons, right? You would have seen it for glasses on platforms like Lenskart. It's there for shoes, etc. But for clothes, it's still by and large an unsolved problem. You can't upload a photo on an e-commerce platform and see what you look like, right? What you see over here, the leftmost image is real. All the three images on the right are generated in near real time, less than half a second, zero post production, right? So within the next few months, we're going to scale this from t-shirts to formal shirts, polos, casual shirts, etc., and make it a sort of viable virtual try-on solution for large platforms. Right. What you have over here is a group of postgrad researchers from IIT KGP and IISc. Incredibly proud to be working with this smarter bunch this early on in our journey. The next solution I'm going to show you is called Model Swap. Does exactly what it sounds like. What you see on the screen over here is a real human, right?
Mm.
Here we've swapped it out to a black person and we've swapped it out to a white person. So you can package this in a few different ways. One is you can upgrade the conventional good looks of a model. The second is you can do catalog image based personalization to match the ethnicity of the
Mm.
end consumer. Right. So
Right.
just going to run through a few examples. These are clients in different parts of the world, like Bangladesh, Budapest, like early pilots, I
Mm.
must confess. We're still very, very fresh to the market. And we should be able to upgrade the model very cost effectively over here. In both the solutions that I showed you so far, the apparel is preserved, right? So you're not
Mm.
messing with the apparel over there. We're changing the human and the background and things like that, right?
Right.
Here in this solution, we get rid of the model altogether. So you just shoot on a mannequin. What we do is we
Mm.
understand the pose from the mannequin and then we transpose it onto a human that matches that profile. Now, if we're able to get a movable mannequin, the poses are a lot more dynamic as well. Last but not least, what I'm showing you is virtual influencers. We're incredibly proud to partner with Mithra to create what I think is the most fashionable virtual influencer, the second most followed virtual influencer in the country. And this is something that we've seen as a very solid wave in different countries like Brazil, South Korea, Japan, US, of course, Europe. So we wanted to bring that into India in a big way. And we think that that's already happening. This is something that's in the final stages with somebody in the US. Um, Last thing, sorry, I said last but not least earlier, we take a flat lay of a sari over here and we generate the image that you see on the left. Right. So the image on the right is an actual photograph. Left is a synthetic human wearing the sari. So this is not AI. We live in an era where everybody calls everything AI these days. This is basically image engineering. We figured out which part of the sari goes where, and we have added sort of shadow maps and stuff like that. So that's a snapshot of everything. We are very firmly within the generative AI engineering for fashion e-commerce space. And very, very early days of our journey, even though we're 2.5 years old, I think we spent over 2 years pre-revenue and in dev. And now we've sort of started seeing a very, very good curve. I think that's what you see for a lot of AI companies. Especially if you're building your own foundational models in deep IP, the gestation period is frustratingly long, but it's exciting afterwards.
Yeah. So, Arvind, what I understand is you're basically solving the catalog problem for the e-commerce retail. I mean, for the online retailers, right? Because it requires a lot of cost, right? So, if I can do one shoot of a model, and
Yeah,
now if I give that image to you, you can maybe transform different kinds of clothing on the same model, right? With all the lighting
absolutely.
and everything, right? Wonderful,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Just one call out or correction I would make to that. Um, yes, you are right. We are saving costs, but the better way to say this is that we are increasing the conversion, or we are giving better quality models that typically drive a higher conversion for a cheaper rate. The reason I'm positioning it like that, or saying it like that, is because when you talk about cost optimization for something in e-commerce, which typically amounts to 1% of top line, that is the spend
Mhm.
that brands spend on cataloging, right? So that is not really an exciting space to problem solve. On 1%
Right,
of the spends, you are sort of
right,
optimizing costs. But if you are able to drive conversion by 5 to 10%, which is what we're all about,
right,
then the slice of that revenue growth that you are able to take is much more exciting. So it's
right.
always better to go conversion and growth optimization lever rather than cost saving lever, just from a
Right.
strategic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And catalog is such an important thing because whenever you
Yeah.
get to buy clothes online, one of the things you see is that how it will look on us, right? On someone who
Yes.
is similar to our physique, the way we look. And that's so important
Absolutely.
because this is one important touch point which essentially really drives conversion, right? Beyond the
100%.
brand and everything. So that is a very exciting part. So Abid, I just want to know since yeah.
Victor, I'm so sorry I interrupted.
Mm,
It's not just conversion, it's also return rates, right? If you look at fashion
mm,
e-commerce as a space as a whole, the big glaring hair on fire problem for most platforms is the return rate. So that return rate in all parts of the world is more or less between 30 to 35%. Right. In
mm,
some evolved markets without COD, it's like closer to 25%, but that's still a massive number, right? The
right.
biggest reason for returns is it didn't fit me when not
Mm,
solving for that.
right. Right.
The very close second biggest one is it didn't look good on me. That we can solve for. Now, if you're able to reduce return rates by, say, one fifth, you're
Mm,
still talking about potentially getting a lot of these loss making companies into EBITDA profitability very quickly
right.
at a
Right.
platform level. So, that is really the long term game and why this technology can be so game changing in bridging online and offline commerce. I'm so sorry I interrupted, but
No,
welcome
no,
back.
absolutely. So, Arvind, now, so since you understand this retail space so closely, I want to take us to give a macro view of the online retail
Yeah.
space. And I understand that you're solving the catalog problem for now using AI and
Yeah.
ML.
Yeah.
But can you also give us some of the pain points of online retail from a macro view that you see where AI has the potential to solve these problems, which right now the retailers are facing?
Absolutely. So I think AI has consistently solved a lot of problems. It's not just coming to the forefront now. Generative AI is coming to the forefront right now. But let's step back maybe 5, 7 years, right? Companies like Mad Street and View.ai, they actually pioneered this space, especially from India and India for the world. So what they did about 5, 7 years back was, can you go through 100,000 images and automatically generate your search tags by saying, I'm wearing a V-neck t-shirt. Can you figure out that there's a V-neck t-shirt? Can you figure out what the color is? Can you figure out what the material is? And can you create all those tags automatically, which earlier used to be a manual driven process? And search leads to, I would say, 40, 50% of revenue for most platforms. So if you're able to add those tags, it's automatically a big conversion lever. So that AI led those workflows or AI vision led workflows have always been there. Obviously, in terms of sort optimization, discount, coupon giving, etc., that AI has always been there through some crude forms. Now, obviously, it's getting a lot more quick and scary also, the way that these ads are sort of personalized to you very, very quickly. But yeah, remarketing is one area where I would see our technology sort of changing the game. Today, if you leave something in your cart, chances are you'll see an ad for that particular shoe or t-shirt a couple of days later, right? Now imagine if on the ad in 2 days, you can show yourself wearing that wearing that shoe, right? That could seem a little Black Mirror type today, but it could make it a much more powerful ad. This is obviously subject to the customer's consent that the platform be able to use your image to market only to you. This is how I would see it evolve. And we're still talking about everything from a two-dimensional perspective. I'm sure that you saw a few months back, Apple created quite a wave by talking about Vision Pro and all that, right? Those 3D augmented reality headsets, Microsoft HoloLens, Oculus, these have been in the market for a while, but they haven't seen mass adoption yet. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, that is going to change in a very, very big way. Soon, what you can probably do is sit in your living room, wear your HoloLens, your glasses, and visualize yourself walking around in 20 different outfits so you can select what you want. And, within 12 hours, the item comes to you and you decide whether you want to keep it or not. So I think it's a continuous path. The path started long ago. Now, generative AI has shown a massive spotlight on the opportunities. But we're just at the very, very early beginning.
Great. Arvind, really great insights, especially what you mentioned about the return rates, right? 30-40%, and that's all reverse logistics, right? I'm paying once to send the good and then paying again to pick it up, and then there is a refund that another delivery that comes in. So I'm paying for one item, I pay thrice as far as shipping costs go. Very great insight on that. What I wanted to understand is these synthetic humans that you're creating, these synthetic models that you're creating. Uh, what goes into, I mean, how do you go about it? I know it's technical, but dumb it down for us. I really liked and understood the way you explained. I mean, very succinctly, you explained how the sari cataloging works, right? Because what you said is you understood where which part goes. So therefore, with a flat image, you're able to transfer it onto a model. How do you go about creating these synthetic models? And because there is an entire variety, right? I cannot just shoot a few models and then try to morph around with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. And thank you for letting me address it. What we've done is built a proprietary deep neural network flow, right? Where it trains on tens of thousands of images of one type first and then another type. What I mean by type is an ethnicity and a size cross section. So it could be a medium build white person, right? That would be one cohort of images. Our algorithm trains through that and interpolates between the tens of thousands of images. What that means is it will generate with mixed attributes of each. Then we actually have a very cool algorithm where you can customize the models. I'm actually just going to share my screen. I know this is more than what you bargained for, but let me show you something which I think is pretty cool. I'm just going to show you how we can customize those models, right? If you look at this, what you see over here is we're going to go from brunette to blonde or Asian to European. Think about it as something on a slider, right? Over here, we're actually going to make these grumpy people smile a little bit. So you can get exactly the facial expression that you want. And then in the third piece, I'm going to show you how we are going to basically attach it back to the human. Okay, so this is at a very broad level how our tech flows. Earlier, I spoke to you about interpolation. This is what that looks like. We're basically bouncing between tens of thousands of models over here, and you can pause it at any frame where you see the model that you want to start with, and then you can customize those models. So that's a granular level of optimization that most visual merchandisers will not be able to get. I mean, you typically tell the agency what kind of model you want and they send somebody, or you maybe get some images and you select which one you want. Here, this is granular level personalization. Once you select this guy, you can even change his hair. You can change his skin tone, make it slightly darker, lighter. You're creating your dream model that matches your brand's ethics. So today, most brands won't tell you that they have their ideal level of inclusivity or diversity. We're going to take that away from them. We're going to give them exactly the level of diversity and inclusivity that they want in probably a couple of years. So the tech looks very cool right now. The thing with Gen AI is everything. I mean, taking it to 99% is one. That last 1% is equivalent effort or 2x the effort. So we're in that last bridge for the last several months, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel now. So I think we'll get there very, very soon.
Okay. Just a comment I had. I was talking to my 8-year-old daughter the other day, and she was and telling her that I'm managing a panel on AI and things, and she was like, "Yeah, AI, it's cool. Tell me about it." But then, doesn't it work on past data, right? It works on past data to create new things. So what's the big deal? When is it going to start creating new stuff? So, and when you talk about interpolation, that is right. So you got A and B, and then you're able to create an A1B, A2B, and things like that until you reach a B.
Absolutely.
When will AI be able to go to C from A to B?
To predictive data, I mean? Or?
No, I'm saying creating something totally new, not going
It,
beyond the set parameters.
That's a very gray area, right? And it's more, I think, a philosophical question than a technological question. I think, I mean, in a sense, when we're generating new people, learning from a blend of tens of thousands of people, technically you could argue that we're creating something totally new also,
True.
right? But is it creating its own data set to create new people? Not as yet. I think we will get there, or we are getting there in bits and pieces in different spaces. I think if you look at OpenAI and ChatGPT and things like that, right? Till very recently, it was only going through data which was 1 year old, but that's caught up very rapidly. I think Bard is now almost till last week or even this week's data, if I'm not mistaken. So this is going to be a very, very rapid curve. We're just on the very, very early stages. Is there a hype cycle? Maybe. I mean, with most technologies, when it reaches this kind of critical mass, everybody thinks it's going to change the world, and then there is a little bit of a deflation that usually happens. I think that could happen a little bit to AI, definitely, compared to where the hype cycle is today. But I do think that this is going to be more of a sustained growth curve than the other hype cycles we've seen in recent memory, say crypto or edtech or something like that. I think this is going to be a lot bigger. But maybe there's an entrepreneur's bias in there.
And we look forward to that, and keep our fingers crossed that that does happen. An add-on question to this thing about the synthetic humans that you're creating. Now, the IP, the technology IP, I understand, but then what about the IP about the model, right? The synthetic human that you're creating. So, is that model also IP, right? So, is that person a certain facial structure with certain hair, etc.? Do you own a IP on that also? And the add-on additional to that is, what if the synthetic human that you're creating, right, looks like me? And then can I mean, is there a possibility that I come and sue you and say that you're using pictures of me in your commercial communication and without paying me any royalty, and that person looks exactly like me?
No, this is something that we get asked a lot. So let me take the second question first, if I may. How we protect ourselves, right? Can we accidentally generate, Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt and get sued to oblivion, right? The theoretical probability of generating somebody that looks like somebody else is the same as you being born with a doppelganger. So it's not zero, but it is real. There is a very small probability there. Now, thankfully, there are some very good image face recognition platforms out there. There is one in particular that we use. It's called Pimeys, Pimeyes. What they do is, if you upload a photo of yourself, it will tell you exactly where on the internet you are, right? And it'll pull up all the images of you on the internet. Scarily accurate. So what we do is, every face that we generate for a client, we pass it through that facial recognition filter to make sure we haven't accidentally generated a celebrity. So the way it works is, the more images of this person there are online, the higher the probability of it finding it, right? And it's pretty good. I don't have a lot of images on the internet, and it found pretty much everything that I've put up. So at least famous people, I would say that we are at a very high confidence level, we're going to be able to avoid. Now, is there a guy whose photo is not on the internet that we generate? That probability is there. But is the probability of them coming to sue us because they don't have a photo on the internet? Probably also very, very unlikely. So it's not an absolute answer. It's a game of probabilities, but I would say in that spectrum, we are relatively well safeguarded. Probably, like I would say, 0.001% will get sued. The other question that you had with regard to, do we IP protect our identities that we create? That's expensive. So we really don't. We create a ton of models for us to generate. But how we do it is, like, there are a couple of clients that have requested us, if we can keep one model just for them. right? And they also want that consistency of, if you look at 200 items, there should be maybe 5 or 10 models. There shouldn't be 200 people, right? So in such a case, what we do is that seed that we generate, that's what it's called when you mix certain attributes, that is retained only for that one customer. So that at least we make sure, and we make sure this is obviously not resembling a famous person, and I think we're sort of good to go.
Nice. And in fact, I had started noticing this on Mithra, and I mean, a few months ago, I was thinking that how would they have gone through such a torturous shoot, the same guy with so many different outfits? And then I was like, no, they wouldn't have done that. Technology shouldn't be that slow now. Great. Thank you.
It might
Thanks.
not be Mithra, so it could be the sellers also. So because it's a marketplace, right? So
Right, right.
there are actually a lot of sellers in different parts of the country. They use a sort of I would say advanced photoshopping method also, where you just keep draping it on a mannequin, and then you cut and paste the limbs and the head, and you do a little bit of shadow matching, and it looks like a decent image. It's just not very scalable, and the quality also, there is typically a deficit. So I don't know which images you might have seen, but this is commonly seen on a lot of horizontal and vertical fashion marketplaces.
Perfect. So, Arvind, and I want to talk to you about the business side of it, right?
Sure.
So, you said that in the first 2 years, you had a lot of difficulty in really convincing people, right? And that was
Yeah.
the pre-Chat GPT sort of era, generative AI. I mean,
Yeah.
it was not that popular in the common parlance. So, I just wanted to understand from you, when you started your journey, what are the kind of objections that you used to get, that you encountered there? And now, how is it changed? I'm sure you still might get some
Oh
objections,
yeah.
right? So how has those kind of objections changed, given generative AI is being now spoken more widely in the common parlance? That's one part of it, and the second part of it is now, since now you are getting a lot of traction more. Can you share some use cases or maybe some success stories of how you've helped some of your clients using this technology? If you can share some insights on this.
Sure. So, let me talk about the first thing first. You asked about sort of the evolution of AI and where we are. Actually, AI and GANs, fundamentally generative adversarial neural networks, they've been around for a while. They've been around for a decade, right? So, or more, even probably a couple. Now, since when it came out, there was a big wave about how this is going to change everything. Then nothing happened, right? It died down. When we were speaking to a lot of people to fundraise, etc., people are like, "We've been hearing about this for a while, but tell me one company that does what you're doing." That is one typical line of thinking that a lot. I mean, to a large extent, VCs are also looking at patterns, right, of what is driving it and trying to identify that pattern early on. When we were talking about generative AI 2.5 years back, there wasn't a pattern in recent memory about it. So being too early, I mean, you guys will know this better than I do. One of the biggest reasons that startups fail is actually timing, right? Being either too early or too late. You need to hit that Goldilocks zone. I don't know. I don't think that we have it by any stretch. I think that we were probably slightly early. Um, so it's a little bit about hanging in the game for long enough, and thankfully I think we came in as slightly more experienced entrepreneurs. There is pros and cons of that as well. Typically most of the rockstar founders that you see today are under 25. I think me and my co-founder were both mid 30s when we were trying to raise. So I think we found people that took a bet on the team, really, rather than the what we were able to show. For the longest time, I think for about a year and a half, we were literally two guys with a story. And when you're a year and a half in and applying to different accelerators and different things to keep your costs down, get GPUs, etc., people are like, this has been a while. When are you going to take this to monetization? So that's still a very, very long path. I think to put that into context, for the first 2 years, we were completely pre-revenue. Then we started monetization with virtual influencers. And to be very honest with you, that is not our proprietary stack. That is the one thing that I showed you that is not something that we have built from the ground up. That is a little bit of we use Unreal Engine's MetaHuman, which is free to use up to a certain level for everybody. And we have a sort of unique workflow. We put the people in real world environments, which is not what it's designed for. But that is more service with a little bit of an X factor rather than deep IP. Now, in the last 4 months is when we've had a different solution come out every sort of month. Even virtual try-ons, what I showed you, is still pre-revenue. So there's still a very, very long way to go. I think we just earned the trust of a few wonderful people who took a bet on us very early on when these patterns weren't there. And right now, thankfully, the wind is in our sails, but we don't know how that's going to last also. Ultimately, we have to prove it with revenue. And thankfully, we're transitioning to that stage where it's not about a story anymore, but we get to talk about traction. But we're not there yet to put what you said, some success stories. Um, we've done a few free pilots with a very large French brand, with one of the largest ethnic brands in the country, which is the sari and salwar image that I showed you, and with one of the very large fashion marketplaces. Today, we've done those small pilots, we've transitioned into small paid pilots, and the next step within 1-2 months is transitioning into engagements which are worth about 15 to 50 lakhs are the numbers that we're talking about right now per month recurring. So it is very much a flat line for a long time, and then hopefully it's a far more exciting curve now. But we're just transitioning into that, so I don't have case studies yet. It's a short answer.
No, I get that. So,
Yeah.
okay. So, Arvind, from drawing from there, and I wanted to now speak like beyond the technology part and what you're doing as an entrepreneur. And you have, I know you have done a bit entrepreneur stunt before also, and you have a wide variety of experiences. So, in such cases, when entrepreneurs in different spaces sometimes take a longer time to hit revenue to show the numbers that investors look for, how does one keep themselves so motivated, or what is it that keeps you going? Is it the story? Is it the belief that yes, there's something we are just getting there, I mean our time is going to come, or is it something else? How does one one stay the course on that?
I mean, there are a lot of bumper sticker things that I can say over here, but I mean, I guess the truth is what will help the most, and that is, as an entrepreneur, you really have to ask yourself, what is your pain threshold? Right. I mean, obviously, there are different kinds of businesses that you can start up. There are some that are revenue generating and monetizable from the get go. Like, say, if you wanted to start a t-shirt brand or something like that, relatively quick to get out there. But if you want to do something like deep tech or something like that, the gestation period is very long and the hit rate is very binary. Sometimes you can work for 2-3 years and not get anywhere. Right. So you need to be prepared for that. And with our specific journey, we've had so many highs and lows. Yeah. Like, I think the one constant that we have had is me and my co-founder at when one of us is high, the other one has brought them back to reality. The other way is also equally important. When one of us is really low, the other person has pulled them back into normalcy. I think that's a very unique combination that we have. We're similar people, but we're diametrically opposite in terms of skill sets, right? I'm more on the business and sales side. He is more completely on the deep tech side. So we've sort of pulled each other back to the norm. I think if you're starting up alone, you tend to go through maybe a period of disillusionment where you lose hope, etc., and then it takes you like 2 weeks to get back to peak productivity. Whereas here, within a day or two, we make sure the other person is back because we need them. And in the beginning, you're sort of going ahead with nothing to lose. Okay, we'll see 6 months, 1 year. After 2 years or after a year and a half, you're like, damn, I've given this 1.5, 2 years of my life. This better work. So you have different things that push you at different points. You have your commitment to each other co-founder when you're down to, pick up the pace and get back to normal. And ultimately, at the end of the day, today with 25 people, we have a team. Yeah. So if I look at the team and I see that there is one or two people that are outworking me or Amrit, then it is a disservice to them at any point. So now that we have 25 people, you still better be the hardest working person in the room or at least close to it at all times. Otherwise, it's not fair to your team because none of these guys are doing this for massive salaries. We don't pay that well. We're lucky that we found some people that like us and are ready to stick with us through hard times and good. So yeah, that's true. Sorry,
Okay,
Sylvie,
Arvind.
you're on.
Yeah, yes, Arvind. So very inspiring, right? I mean, especially that the teamwork that you talk about and how you're thinking from the perspective of your employees. I need to work harder than my team so that they get that inspiration. Also, really impressed with that. I'd like to I'll ask you to put on your long range vision and tell us something more about the trends? You did mention about maybe in the future you could have people putting on an Oculus or whatever else, and then trying out maybe 5-10 dresses in real life, and you see that around, right? So there were, and that stuck to me when you said that, because I virtually imagined myself doing that, and some of the things that stayed in that were. Do you see that as a serious trend? Um, what I had heard was with 3D models, one of the biggest problems was in rendering 3D models in motion was about the fingers, right? So is that still a problem? And the third one is how, because this is such a isolating experience, right? When you put on an Oculus, you're in your own world, but then shopping is still a very social sort of phenomena. Is there a possibility of two people putting on an Oculus and both of them being at the same place and maybe trying out together? So, it's your comments on those things.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. I think there's a lot to unpack in what you said. Let me talk about the first example that you said with fingers, because there's a funny story behind it on why these algorithms actually mess up with the fingers so much. So, in the US and in different parts of the world, people go fishing, right? And they all put up their pictures of them holding the fish, right? So the training data gets confused between the fish and when you are holding the hand. So that is actually in tens of thousands of images where it's learning fingers. That has caused a little bit of confusion because there is a little bit of reflection, everything coming from the fish. So that's actually one of the reasons that contribute to that, which I found was very interesting. I think that, I mean, to a certain extent, that itself has been more or less solved now. At least we can do perfect models without distortions in the finger. Sometimes we do get it, but it's instant to regenerate it to you. You can always try till you get it perfect. But yeah, I do see a very, very strong evolutionary curve. But let me also just say that it's not all going to lead to good things at a broad level with AI. I'm stepping out of the fashion lens. I think I spoke about that. But with let me also say that ironically, me or my co-founder are not like big believers in technology. I use a 3-year-old, the smallest screen phone that you can do, so that I spend less time on the phone. I'm not a great user of WhatsApp or any of those platforms also. So which is quite ironic that you're doing an AI company and doing this. But I think AI needs to be regulated to some extent. I think a lot of countries, EU, etc., are figuring out how to do this. One is obviously copyright and things like that, but also the power of it is also a little bit scary right now. It's not long before you see a lot of malware, spyware, etc., which is driven by AI. You can easily use AI to create a website right now. What if you can create a fake bank website, send a fake email to somebody, tell that person to go to this place and reset your password. And if you send this to 100,000 people, chances are at least 100 people are going to fall for it, right? So those are things that you can do. You could do it earlier with a manual person sitting and sending it to 100,000 people or setting out 10 different websites. But today you can do it in a few hours, what earlier would have taken probably a month project, right? So there are a lot of scary pitfalls of this technology at a very broad level, even within fashion, just coming back to that. Synthetic humans, more or less, I mean, it's fine. But what if you are stealing somebody's designs at scale and melding it with somebody else to create a 5% differentiation? And then that whole uniqueness of designers can be far more temporary than it is today. I'm sure that fashion cycles probably lasted a lot longer before the age of the internet. Once the internet is compressed like hell. Now with AI changing designs and predicting new designs, it could further compress it. So what this could effectively lead to is a lot of wastage as well. Like with fashion, you are always concerned about the environment, and especially with the return rates and the non-sellable inventory that comes in that is returned, there is a lot of fashion wastage that goes into landfill. What a lot of these technologies can also do is reduce that amount of landfill by reducing the return rate. So it's always a battle between using the technology for a good cause versus what a certain number of people could use it the wrong way for. So I think thankfully, humanity has always proven that it is a far more number of good people that will protect it than a small number of people that will try and go the other way. So I think that trend will hopefully continue. With AI, the weapons are a little more pointed and a little more rapid rather than global warming, etc., which is still very, very real and very scary. So yeah, it's just another thing to watch out for, and I think that's just part of evolution and it's going to keep coming. So.
Uh, Absolutely. So, Arvind, you talked of the regulations about government regulation, and this is one thing I want to ask, understand from you. So, when I look around me, I find broadly there are three kinds of people. One who is very scared of the AI landscape, how this is going to come in, and that thing is an existential threat to humanity. Then there's another group which says that this is another fad, like any technology. I mean, yes, nature of jobs should change, but then we will evolve, right? That's another kind, and who are ever optimistic. And then there's a third kind who still are trying to figure out what is happening. They are observing. At somewhere they think this can be a different thing. This might the way, because right now we are talking of changes in months, not even years. We're not talking of 3 years, 5 years, talking next 3 months, next 5 months, this technology is going to evolve, this is going to give new changes, right? So this makes it, I mean, we did not have conversations around technology in months before, at least as far as I understand, remember. So this three broadly I see. Now, this puts a lot of, I mean, it is a challenge for policymakers as well, right? Europe is one place where they have already started drafting some regulations around AI, but most of the world around, including India, US, they're still figuring out, they're observing the space. If you listen to policymakers, they're saying, we are observing the space keenly, but we do not think that we need to bring in regulations, right? We need to understand it even more. So, as someone who is so closely involved in this space, who interact with so many stakeholders around, what is your take? Do you think these regulations have should come in right now, or do you think it's better for policymakers to still wait and watch? What is your take on it? I mean, because one of the fears is that it might be too late before we start regulating, because the way this technology is evolving, and the moment you have so many jobs or so much of change around, it will lead to social unrest, right? And that's a very far-fetched thing, but there is a possibility with it, the way things are shaping up. So, what's your take on this? Do you think the policymakers at some point have to do it sooner than later? What do you think?
So, because the first thing I just want to call out is India is not waiting and watching to see what other countries are doing. They're actually being very, very proactive in this. And they've taken a very prudent approach where they are seeking industry inputs and formulating a policy with them. And I've seen a few of those draft policies. We've been working closely with NASSCOM, etc., which is helping steer this process. And they've been doing it for I think nearly a year now. So they're actually very, very ahead of what it looks like. Maybe a lot of it hasn't come into the public domain yet. But the way that they are going about it is at least, I mean, I'm nobody to comment on it, but to me, it looks very, very impressive, right? The way that they take a balanced approach. And that balanced approach is really what I want to talk about over here, right? Because with something like AI, as we touched upon earlier, there is incredible danger also if it's used the wrong way, right? At the same time, there is incredible opportunity. If you look at the US, it is virtually being held up by the tech stocks. And those tech stocks, I mean, you would have seen the rally in NVIDIA and things like that, which shows no signs of slowing. It's completely ridiculous that in one day, they added the market cap of a company like Intel. I think that's when their last quarterly results came out. And it that dip that everybody was talking about in sales of GPUs is not it's not coming through as yet, right? They're selling as much as they're producing. So I think we can't afford to get lost in this race in a maze of over-regulation. I think policymakers are aware of that. The truth is that I am not qualified or the right person to say this, but I will say that it is very, very important to take a balanced approach over here. What I mean by that is just connecting it to privacy and data security, right? If you took it Midjourney or platforms like that that have trained on everything on the internet, right? You can generate a portrait of yourself in the style of Van Gogh, right? Are you copyright? Are you infringing on the work of Van Gogh? I mean, take a artist that's alive today. Are you infringing on their work? They would probably be livid that you can do this, right? It takes away their uniqueness to a large degree. But at the same time, if now that some other companies and other parts of the world have done it, where you don't necessarily have that control, can you afford for your entire IT space where you have a legitimate edge to compete. We have phenomenal engineering talent in India that is exported to all parts of the world. If these people come back and build, can we build the next Nvidia or Microsoft or Google or Facebook out of India? Right? Um, and those are going to be AI-led companies in about 5 to 10 years. Like we saw the IT services boom in the 2000s. I think 2020s is going to be sort of the AI boom, right? So we want the next era of Infosys and Wipros to be born over here. I honestly don't know how they will regulate this. It's a very, very, very tricky area. But thankfully, there are far smarter minds than I am who are looking into it, and they are taking a very balanced approach. I can tell you that between lawmakers, between startups, they're doing a lot of wonderful work. I just want to call out NASSCOM, DTC, Telangana RevUp, AI Accelerator, Intel Startup Program, all these guys. Our startup would not be possible if it wasn't for these accelerators, NetApp accelerators, another one. So, like, they are enabling the startups that we have, because I want to explain one thing very clearly also. A large part of our costs and all AI companies' costs is GPUs. Right now in the US, this average seed round is much bigger than the average seed round in India. But the biggest cost head is more or less the same, whether you're an Indian startup or whether you're a US startup. So you're already a little bit handicapped when you're doing foundational models out of a place like India, which is what Sam Altman, I think, was alluding to in that comment when he said, can Indian companies compete with us? And he said no. But that became a slightly nationalistic pushback that was received. But he was just being logical. He's like, they have so many GPUs. It's so quick for them to train an algorithm that for us, it would mean 50% of the money that we have in the bank today as a startup to do one training run that they would do in one day. So, so it's also important. And I just want to, how I'm connecting that to this is the government is actually putting in place a lot of mechanisms to facilitate startups like us to not be handicapped in that manner. So they are taking a very, very prudent approach, and I'm sure that they will get the job done.
Since you brought this up, I had a question. The US is way ahead. We do understand that. China is not too far behind, right? And India is somewhere inching up. But where do you see the power centers lying in the future? I mean, is there going to be something out of Europe? Is Japan going to have something to contribute? How is Russia placed? How do you see the pecking line? Do you see India maybe overtaking any of the um, the the forerunners, US or China, at any point of time soon?
Most definitely. I mean, I think if we don't, it will be surprising. At least, I mean, we'll come to AI, but let's talk macros first, right? I mean, the US is slowing down a lot. China with real estate is slowing down at probably a faster clip. Russia is slightly more isolated than other parts of the world. India is very luckily in a bright spot. It's a little bit of luck and it's a little bit of positioning. I think in the last few years we've seen our government play things beautifully without and in a sense that we haven't seen that kind of conviction and pushback earlier, where today there is a lot more strength, and that strength also comes from the demographic dividend that we have to play in the next 10 years, right? I would say at the end of the day, it's still a function of where the money lies, and if you look at where the money lies today, it's predominantly with the US and some European countries, right? So today we have a massive opportunity. I think we are probably where China was maybe 20 years ago. You would have seen this in a lot of articles. It is ours to screw up. If we ride the wave correctly, I think the opportunity is just incredible. You have so many factors playing in together right now, like the brain drain from India, the people that left in the 90s, 2000s, a lot of them are making a beeline back. And today, you can see globally that Indian people are running some of the biggest companies more than at any other time in history. All these factors together are a lot of other countries aren't scared of China or Russia the way they are scared of the way they look at India, right? So I think we have a tremendous opportunity over here. We've always had the engineering and the mathematical and the medicine talent behind it. it's instead of that talent being exported to different parts of the world and contributing to their economy, I think you're going to see a flywheel effect where that's going to start coming back, where the senior stakeholders are going to start coming back and giving the junior people who are starting their career a lot more of an impetus to stay in India and build the India dream. So I'm very much a strong India bull. I think that the way that this would probably play out is US is very much on top right now. Continue to probably be that way for the next 5 to 10 years in AI. China, it depends on how this whole microchips situation plays out. I think with the Huawei phone release a couple of weeks back, we don't know whether what kind of manufacturing capabilities they have. With NVIDIA scaling the way it has, they're bound to have a lot of competitors, and those competitors are going to come from different parts of the world now. So with I don't think TSMC, NVIDIA will have that unique positional advantage that they had for the last 10 years, for the next 10 years. Hopefully, we're going to see a couple of companies from India. You're seeing China, India, everybody doubling down on chip production, right? And that is really, I don't think that is being given as much importance as it should. And the AI wave is going to be directly proportional to that. So I think over the next 15, 20 years, it's very obvious that I think India is probably going to be number one and number two. Within the AI race, I think it might take maybe 5, 7 years to reach number two, but we should be cognizant of where we are. I think it's US, China, probably us. So.
Great. Absolutely. We share the same optimism, Arvind. So now I have a related question to that, right? So there's no doubt that over the last decade or more, the way the startup ecosystem, and I'm not just saying for companies or entrepreneurs, but the entire ecosystem, the way it has evolved is a fascinating story for the world to see, right? And the way different policies have been framed, the way technology and the digital revolution, the catapult that we did is indeed fascinating. Now, we have come here, but the fact of the matter is that we still have a long way to go. Our per capita income is still on very low side, right? And yes, we might become the third largest economy by 27, 28. We are fifth right now. But even when you become that, given the population we have, the per capita income is still going to be low, and there's a lot of potential as a result of this that has to be unleashed, right? Now, someone from the startup space, as you see the policies so closely, as you see how each policy, and even you're part of the consultation process as well, because a lot of this does not come to the public domain till they're put it or they're actually drafted properly. So I want to understand from you, we have come here and we are doing a good job, in fact, a great job. But for the next 5 years or maybe next 10 years, what do you think are the key things that policymakers and even the larger ecosystem needs to do or focus on that you think can really help us catapult to the next level and the much required one? Yeah.
I mean, I think the single biggest thing is to set up GPUs that are accessible to small early stage startups to be able to train, because we have no dearth of talent. There are three things that are required for AI companies to succeed, right? One is the research and engineering talent, right? The algorithms, if you will. The second is the data set, right? The data set is very contextual. If you're talking about autonomous driving, you probably need CCTV or driving cameras. If you're talking about fashion like us, you're talking about mannequins and online data. So some the government can provide at scale, some they can't. That is an easy sort of thing that the government is doing, and the government is very, very actively doing that. Especially, I think the Telangana government is one that I know of that is doing it at least. The third, where I think the government will play the biggest role, is in GPUs, as I was mentioning earlier, right? To put that into context, for an early stage startup like us, one training run, say for front view round neck t-shirts, costs about as much as $15,000 or $20,000, right? If you make a mistake in that training run, you're down $20,000. You make 10, 15 mistakes in your code, which is something that you're innovating for the first time, and your startup is under, right? So that is consequently what happens is the researchers, the engineers are checking their code 10 times more than they would vis-a-vis if you are a part of a Google or a Meta or any of these or an Amazon where you had tons of these GPUs and you could just train, make mistakes, iterate much faster. So we are a little handicapped in not being able to have those GPUs at a very cost-effective access. I think the way that the government can help is in setting up these massive data centers with like A100s, 80 GB, like a ton of them, and giving it out to startups that qualify on some predetermined criteria, right? that if they are building something foundational, if it is something that can be built in India, exported to the world, if they have been vetted by some tech experts, etc., then they should be allowed to use this for free or at a very subsidized rate. I think that is something that they are actively considering. Um, but that is one big area that they can help. And I think that a lot of sometimes you need the government to be able to provide a lot of data sets, like say for example satellite imaging. It can be used to make crop insurance far more accurate. For instance, there might be a few startups starting out. Maybe the government can facilitate providing them with the data for free, and I think these are already very much in motion. The engineering talent is really the startup's prerogative, so I don't think the government should or could step in there.
Now, when you were talking about all the data and the data centers that are there, I was talking to someone from NASCOM the other day, and their apprehension was about the amount of energy that the data centers are going to be consuming. In your area of business, or when you talked about crop insurance, then those are narrow data sets that they're going to be working at. The images are going to be of satellite images. For you, images would be of humans and mannequins, right? But then for things like self-driving cars, etc., or for something like Chat GPT, which needs to access all the data that's there in the world to create its answer, um, the amount of processing power that they need, and therefore the related energy costs, right, are soon going to be overwhelming, right? And that's going to have pollution implications, energy implications, availability of energy, all those implications. Um, do you see that as a big threat in the future? And also, what I picked up from what you were saying is because you and in India are constrained in your access to the GPUs, you work twice as hard, right? Just like what was it? The was it I'm forgetting which car hiring company was that, because they were number two to Hertz. They said we try twice as much, right? We try twice as harder. So maybe because you're in a resource constrained world, you would be putting in twice as much effort to make sure that your code is efficient, so that you do not use as much GPU power. Do you see this GPU power, energy consumption, etc., being a big threat to the development of AI in the future?
Definitely, but I think that it could also be rephrased to a big opportunity for the world to move green in a very big data hungry world. Like this problem is not new; it's been there for a while. I think even a few years back, when you talk about crypto, etc., they were setting up these mining stations right next to hydroelectric plants so that it could be renewable energy and it could be far more cost effective, right? So I think it's a massive opportunity. I think there are a lot of companies that are already entering the space. I remember seeing something which I thought was incredibly cool, where Microsoft was setting up data centers under the ocean, harnessing tidal waves to power these GPUs, right? So I mean that's so cool to one of the big cost heads is cooling, right? To not require that when it's so low under the ocean, and to be able to use the tidal waves to harness energy to power the GPU. So I think um, the every time there's a problem, humanity is somewhat risen to the occasion to solve it. Sometimes that lag is a bit more pronounced than we would have liked, but I think that these are just opportunities that we will solve, and I think that it is getting solved. I mean, I don't think we're very far away from seeing a whole bunch of data centers right next to a large number of windmills or solar power, solar stations in places like Rajasthan, etc. So it's happening. It's probably just a little bit slower. I think the bigger the country, it takes a little bit more for it to get moving. But once it gets moving, it's a little harder to stop. So I think that's where we are right now. We've just started getting moving in these sort of tech directions. But is it a threat? Definitely. Is it worrying for global warming? 100%. But are there entrepreneurs out there trying to solve for this? Yeah, and I think that they will get the support that they need in an ecosystem like what India is building today. Like, if you look at starting up today versus 10 years ago, I think Victor briefly spoke about the one time I tried starting up before as well in 2015 for a year. So it's totally changed. The number of accelerators, people to get advice from, the number of founders who you can talk to who are 1 or 2 years ahead of you to prevent you from making the same mistakes that they did. And it is a flywheel ecosystem, right? You don't want other founders to make the same mistakes that you did. Like SF has reached this stage because they've had that flywheel effect for the last decade. We are starting to see the green shoots of that flywheel effect now. There are so many entrepreneurship groups that I am on where if somebody has a problem or somebody needs a reference for help on something, say whether it's tax or audit or contract closure, something very specific and granular also, you get that help in 5 hours. 5 6 years ago that was just non-existent, right? So um, we will rise to the occasion, and it's I think a tremendous opportunity in front of us, not just in terms of environmental solutions, but in world-beating solutions, including I think in GPU manufacturing also. We're not far behind. I mean, I think iPhones are now being manufactured here and sold on day one, so we're
No,
close.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the power of an ecosystem, right? I mean, like it's just
Yeah,
we or I growing. It's about together we grow together. I mean, together
absolutely.
we build it up, right? And I think as in India, the one of the reasons why this ecosystem is so grown is because of the maturity of the founders as well. It's not a zero sum game. People understand that. It's that when you
Yeah,
help each other, that's when you grow together. And it's a big
absolutely.
pie to actually capture. It's not just a smaller one where everything's
Absolutely.
standard. So this is the beauty of it. So we're almost on time. I just had one last question from me, and then maybe George can wind up. So, Arvind, so we started on the micro about Neuropixel. We went to the macro. I just want to get back to the micro once more. And I want to understand from you. So, when you hire people, okay, and not just your company, the AI space overall, how do you see the talent right now? Do you see enough available talent? And even for the graduates who are going to graduate, this college university students, what are some of the skill sets that you think they should acquire if they want to get into the AI space? What are the, I mean, which will help the AI industry as overall to have a better pool of talent? Some light on that.
So I don't think I'm actually the right person to address this because I'm the business guy. My co-founder is the tech guy. But at a broad level, I think we've already got phenomenal talent coming in from computer science. I think institutions like the IISc are unleashing an incredible bunch of postgrads, PhDs, and increasingly they're starting to stay back in India and work as well. Earlier, these guys would all migrate to places like the US or England, etc. So that is already happening. I think machine learning is a tremendous place to be right now. Molecular engineering, renewables, those are the places that I think is going to see a lot of action over the next 5 to 10 years. Um, Signal processing, those are typically the areas that we have hired in. But I just wanted to also take a step back and slightly say something philosophical. I know that's not what you're looking at. Every time that we have hired looking purely at technical skills, we have made a mistake, right? The thing to over-index on is curiosity. You don't need fancy degrees. You don't need great institutions. If the person is curious, we live in an era today where the access to knowledge is unlike anything that has been there in the past. With YouTube videos, you have access to the best people, right? So while we have a tremendous research team that has created very deep IP for us, what I'm trying to say is some of the interesting IP that we have also built has actually been powered by a documentary filmmaker who has no experience on machine learning, but he's doing very hardcore vision stuff right now and it's completely self-taught, right? So if you are able to find people that have curiosity and you're able to motivate them the right way, they will beat people with a degree and a great qualification, a great set of marks any day of the week, right? If you are able to find both those things together, then you're really onto something. But if I had to choose one between the two, I would choose curiosity any day of the week.
Perfect. Arvind, I cannot leave any AI person without asking the typical question I ask everyone, which is how far in the future do you think the singularity is going to come in? Right. So we've had mass media exposure with films like Transcendence, which showed the negative side of
Yeah.
singularity, and Interstellar, maybe, which talked about somewhere the positive side. But how far in the future do you think that singularity exists, or is it ever going to come?
I mean, that's such a philosophical question. I'm going to throw it back in a different way. What is time anyway, right? We're just in one part of, I mean, or what is, how do you know what we're seeing is real? Or at the end of the day, it takes, time is a function of light and how far how much time it takes to travel, right? So maybe it's already happened in some parts and we are reliving some part of the past. So I have no idea. So I think we are proceeding at a pretty rapid pace to a pretty scary place. But I'm sure that we will figure out how to compartmentalize things and make things secure so we are not at risk at some point. Every time that there is, I mean, at the end of the day, there's been nuclear weapons for several decades now, and we haven't thankfully had a nuclear war as yet, which if you had asked somebody 30, 40 years ago, they would have thought that it was probably 5, 10 years away at max. So we're probably at that stage right now with AI, and maybe we'll be okay, I hope.
Great. Thank
And
you.
maybe if
Thank you.
singularity happens, it might not be negative also.
Yes. So thank you for that philosophical answer and handling that question very well. It was one of the best answers I've heard. So Arvind, thank you. Thank you so much for having come, and thank you for having developed what you have developed, because I was going through your website, and that old teenager in me who was amazed seeing the Michael Jackson black or white video, right? And I was reliving those times again going through your website. It was really amazing, the work that you're doing, and talking to you also. And thank you for sparing that time to come here out of your busy agenda. Right. Thanks a lot, Arvind. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Thank you so much, and we should stay in touch, right? Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say a big thank you to you both as well for allowing small entrepreneurs like us to have a little bit of spotlight. And I think that this will impact the ecosystem. These are the flywheels that we are creating today that were just not possible a few years ago. So thank you both so much for what you're doing for the ecosystem, and hope to catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind.